Most people grow up believing that success is the reward for intelligence, effort, and discipline. They're told that if they learn the rules, follow the system, and play fairly, life will eventually grant them security. But as Machiavelli wrote, men are so simple and so obedient to present necessities that he who deceives will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. The truth is far darker. The world doesn't punish ignorance, it punishes independence. The moment you begin teaching yourself, thinking for yourself, and moving without permission, the system turns against you. It's not because you're a threat to others. It's because you're a threat to the structure that controls them. Every society, every corporation, every empire has one silent law. Obedience sustains order. That's what the Medici understood when they controlled Florence, not through violence, but through favor. Give the masses an education, yes, but not the kind that makes them dangerous. Give them ambition, but attach it to approval. Reward them for repetition, not for revelation. That's how you build loyal workers, not sovereign minds. From the moment you enter a classroom, you're taught the hierarchy of thought. Raise your hand before you speak. Memorize what's already been said. Wait for validation before you move. It's the same psychology emperors use to manage their courts. Make your subjects fear disapproval more than defeat. And it works. Schools are factories of compliance. They produce reliable citizens who mistake good behavior for intelligence. You're graded not for originality, but for obedience. You're not trained to build empires, you're trained to serve one. Now look at the modern version of the same design. The corporate world rewards predictability the same way kingdoms once rewarded loyalty. Promotions go to those who stay quiet, who never challenge authority, who repeat the company's doctrine with a smile. The few who try to move differently, to question the process, to experiment, are labeled arrogant or not a team player. Machiavelli would call them dangerous. He warned that a ruler must always fear the unpredictable man because he cannot be bribed, coerced, or shamed into conformity. The self-taught person embodies that threat. He's not waiting for the world to hand him a manual. He's writing his own. That's what makes self-education revolutionary. It's not about learning faster. It's about breaking dependence. A man who can teach himself doesn't need the system's credentials. And once he no longer needs its validation, he becomes uncontrollable. History's greatest disruptors, from Leonardo da Vinci's sketching war machines in secret, to modern innovators like Elon Musk teaching himself physics, all share this same Machiavellian trait, self-directed learning as rebellion. They didn't ask what was allowed. They simply built what others couldn't imagine. But here's the subtle cruelty of the system. It doesn't destroy rebels, it distracts them. It offers endless, approved paths of learning that feel liberating but aren't. You can get a degree in entrepreneurship taught by people who've never built anything. You can learn philosophy stripped of risk, art stripped of rebellion, and leadership stripped of power. You're told you're free to think, but only within the lines they drew centuries ago. The illusion of choice is the most effective form of control. As Machiavelli noted, the promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Freedom itself has become a managed illusion. Think about how this illusion works. You're told to chase the same checklist everyone else is chasing: degree, job, mortgage, retirement. The more steps you complete, the deeper you're trapped. Because what looks like progress is actually programming. The system survives not because it's strong, but because it convinces you that stepping outside of it is suicide. It whispers, "Stay safe. Stay certified, stay normal. And most people obey, not out of fear of failure, but fear of being alone. They'd rather be slaves among the crowd than kings in isolation. That's why self-taught individuals are always misunderstood. They threaten the fragile balance of obedience. They remind everyone else that the gate is open, that the chains are imaginary. And every structure, whether an empire or an institution, is built on the belief that the gate must remain closed. When you start learning on your own, you expose how weak the system truly is. You prove that success doesn't require permission, that wealth doesn't need credentials, that mastery can be forged in silence. And nothing terrifies authority more than the man who no longer needs its approval. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think the system means a handful of powerful people controlling everything. It's not. It's a network, habits, incentives, and beliefs that maintain themselves. Nobody has to pull the strings anymore because the machine runs automatically. Universities depend on tuition. Corporations depend on predictable labor. Media depends on attention. Together, they form a self-correcting organism whose only goal is survival. It doesn't need to kill you. It just needs to keep you compliant. And compliance doesn't come from fear. It comes from dependence. If you can't think for yourself, you'll always need permission to act. That's why the system doesn't fear the uneducated. The uneducated are harmless. It fears the self-educated, because once you learn how to learn, you can dismantle the entire illusion. But the deeper question is this: if the system isn't run by any single person, what exactly gives it power? What keeps it alive, even when everyone knows it's broken? The answer isn't outside of you. It's inside you. The system survives, not because it's powerful, but because it's persuasive. It convinces you that without its validation, your knowledge has no value. But Machiavelli warned that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can feel. Society praises the visible certificate, not the invisible skill. That's why a man who spends years studying alone, building quietly, and mastering his craft is ignored, until the moment his results become undeniable. Then suddenly, they call him a genius. But before that, they call him reckless, unstable, or arrogant. That's the paradox. The self-taught man exposes the lie that power requires permission. He shows that success isn't granted, it's seized. The system hates him not because he's wrong, but because he's proof that the system itself isn't necessary. Think of every empire that's ever existed: the church in Renaissance Italy, the British crown, or today's academic industrial machine. They all operate on the same principle: monopoly of legitimacy. You're free to learn, but your learning doesn't count until they bless it. Without their stamp, your knowledge is invisible. Yet history's greatest minds were forged precisely in that invisibility. Leonardo da Vinci, illegitimate and unschooled, dissected corpses in secret to understand anatomy. He wrote his notes backward to avoid persecution. Nikola Tesla slept in laboratories. Machiavelli himself, banished from Florence and branded a failure, wrote The Prince in Exile, his most dangerous work born from rejection. Every self-taught man must pass through this exile, because outside the walls of approval lies the only real form of learning: necessity. Now let's bring it closer to our world. Consider two men. One spends 4 years studying business in a university, memorizing frameworks. The other, let's call him Amir, spends those same years running a tiny online shop, failing repeatedly, watching customer behavior, learning marketing by survival. When both emerge after 4 years, one has a degree, The other has skill. One waits for a company to hire him. The other is already generating income. Who's the real strategist? Machiavelli would say it's Amir, because he learned through virtù, his own capacity to adapt, to conquer uncertainty with ingenuity. And the system despises that, because virtù cannot be standardized. That's why true self-education feels like rebellion. It demands risk. It demands you build without applause, fail without pity, and persist without reassurance. But it also gives you something no institution can sell: psychological sovereignty. You stop depending on others to define intelligence. You start measuring progress by results, not recognition. And that makes you dangerous, because the moment you stop needing their validation, you become what Machiavelli described as a prince unto himself. You're no longer inside the machine. You're building one of your own. The first law of this new power is independent thinking. The self-taught man doesn't consume knowledge to blend in. He consumes it to break out. When he reads, he's not collecting facts, he's gathering weapons. Each idea becomes a blade, each mistake a lesson. He learns what others fear to touch: contradiction. Because truth isn't clean, it's political. The system trains you to memorize, but the self-taught learn to interpret. That's why they can see patterns others miss. While most people copy, the independent mind combines. It's not linear, it's strategic. The second law is self-reliant mastery. Modern men confuse independence with isolation. But Machiavelli never advised working alone. He advised relying only on yourself when everything else collapses. That means creating systems that don't depend on moods, teachers, or luck. It means waking up before motivation arrives. It means studying when no one's watching. True mastery is built in solitude but tested in the world. Think of Steve Jobs obsessing over fonts after dropping out of college. Think of Elon Musk reading rocket engineering textbooks because he couldn't afford to hire experts. These men didn't wait for mentors. They became their own. And the results reshaped industries. The third law is strategic ignorance. The most educated people are often the least decisive because they drown in information. The self-taught man learns what Machiavelli called the art of choosing among dangers. He filters. He ignores noise. He doesn't chase every new idea. He studies what gives leverage. He practices intellectual minimalism, focusing on the few things that yield control. Picture two learners. One spends hours scrolling, consuming endless motivational content. The other picks a single topic, say copywriting, design, or trading, and practices it daily for 6 months. One is entertained. The other evolves. That's the difference between learning and escaping. And if you observe the rich and powerful, the self-made elite, you'll notice they all practice strategic ignorance. Warren Buffett spends 80% of his day reading, but only about things that sharpen his advantage. Jeff Bezos avoided meetings that didn't serve his long-term plans. These are not random habits. They're Machiavellian tactics, weaponizing focus to eliminate weakness. Because every minute you waste on irrelevant information is a minute your rival uses to outthink you. Now connect these three laws: independent thinking, self-reliant mastery, and strategic ignorance. And you'll see a single thread running through them: control. Not control over others, but over yourself. And that's what the system fears most. Because a man who governs his own mind can no longer be ruled by anyone else. But independence alone doesn't guarantee victory. A soldier who fights alone might be brave, but he's still vulnerable to those who understand the larger game. Machiavelli warned that unarmed prophets are destroyed. In other words, intellect without cunning is suicide. And most self-taught men, after breaking free, fall not because they're weak, but because they mistake freedom for power. What they need next is something rarer: the art of strategy. The ability to play slow while others burn fast. To wait, to calculate, and to strike only once, when victory is certain. Freedom without strategy is chaos. It gives you space, but not strength. That's why most self-taught men rise fast, then collapse faster. They break out of the system only to be crushed by it later. Because while they learned how to think independently, they never learned how to play independently. Machiavelli wrote, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." In other words, it's not your freedom that gives you power. It's how you wield it. This is where the second tier of mastery begins: the advanced principles that turn knowledge into influence. Strategic patience, leverage, and substitution. Let's begin with strategic patience. Most men believe patience means waiting passively. But real patience is offensive. It's psychological warfare disguised as calm. Machiavelli observed that fortune is a woman who yields only to those who are prepared. The powerful don't move slowly because they're afraid. They move slowly because they understand timing is everything. Every empire that endured learned this. The Medici waited decades to tighten their hold on Florence. Rockefeller sat on oil leases while competitors went bankrupt. The difference between luck and mastery is timing, and patience is the weapon that sharpens timing. Consider Leo, a young digital strategist. While everyone around him chased quick profits, crypto, dropshipping, AI fads, he did something unusual. He studied human psychology, the invisible machinery behind every purchase. He learned persuasion, attention, desire. For months, he built in silence. When the market shifted and the noise died, he launched his product. It exploded. People called him lucky. But luck, as Machiavelli would say, is merely patience meeting opportunity. The self-taught strategist knows that power compounds in the shadows, unseen until it becomes undeniable. Next comes leverage, the modern form of virtue. In Machiavelli's world, virtue meant the blend of boldness, cunning, and mastery that allowed a ruler to bend fortune to his will. In our age, virtue is leverage, the ability to make one move that multiplies itself 1,000 times. The average man trades time for money. The self-taught strategist trades thought for power. He builds systems, products, or skills that replicate his effort while he sleeps. One line of code, one course, one investment. These are the weapons of the modern prince. Look at Warren Buffett, who spent decades learning to make money while he wasn't working. Or Naval Ravikant, who said, "Code and media are permissionless leverage. You can multiply yourself without anyone's approval." That's pure Machiavellian logic. The prince who understands leverage doesn't fight every battle himself. He builds alliances, machines, and narratives that fight for him. That's how kingdoms are built quietly, one mechanism at a time. But leverage alone can be dangerous without control. That's where the third principle enters: substitution. It's the ability to replace weakness with systems. Wherever you lack strength, you build structure. Wherever you lack resources, you use creativity. Machiavelli wrote that a wise ruler must build his foundations on what is his own, not what belongs to others. The self-taught man takes this literally. He doesn't complain about lacking tools, he invents them. He doesn't wish for ideal conditions, he manufactures them. Take the story of Ayodele, a young designer from Nigeria who wanted to compete globally, but couldn't afford expensive software. Instead of giving up, he mastered free open-source tools, created art that stood out, and began attracting clients worldwide. When they saw his work, No one cared what tools he used. They only asked when he could start. That's substitution in action, transforming scarcity into strength. The system hates substitution because it reveals the ultimate lie, that you need permission, credentials, or resources to win. You don't. You only need strategy. These three advanced principles, patience, leverage, and substitution, form the foundation of Machiavellian strategy in the modern world. They make you untouchable because they allow you to thrive where others panic. When you're patient, you can wait out chaos. When you have leverage, you can multiply effort infinitely. And when you master substitution, you can turn any weakness into power. This is how the self-taught transform from rebels into rulers. They stop fighting the system and start outsmarting it. Think about how this applies beyond business. In relationships, patience is emotional control, silence that reveals truth. Leverage is reputation, letting your name speak before you do. Substitution is adaptability, remaining strong even when approval is withdrawn. In money, patience builds compounding wealth, leverage multiplies assets, and substitution keeps you rich even in crisis. In every domain, these three rules mirror the principles of war. Wait, multiply, replace. But there's a darker side. Those who ignore these principles fall into the exact traps the system wants. The impatient are destroyed by speed. They chase every new idea and never master one. The ones without leverage remain slaves, trading time for comfort until they die exhausted. And those who never learn substitution stay powerless, always waiting for ideal conditions that never come. These three weaknesses, impatience, dependency, and fragility, are how the system maintains control. They keep men spinning, learning without acting, chasing without building, living without ruling. Machiavelli called this asymmetry, the ability of a small force to defeat a larger one through intelligence. The self-taught man practices asymmetry naturally. He doesn't fight with resources, he fights with understanding. He doesn't challenge the system head-on, he bends it. He learns to use its own mechanisms against itself. The patient strategist waits while others burn. The man of leverage wins while others work. The master of substitution builds power from nothing. That's the art of quiet domination. And yet, there's one more battle left, the most dangerous of all. Because once you master these rules, once you rise through silence and cunning, the system doesn't attack you anymore. It does something far smarter. It seduces you. The greatest trap isn't oppression, it's acceptance. Once you've built power on your own terms, the system will no longer fight you. It will invite you in. It will offer safety, titles, validation, a seat at the table. But Machiavelli warned, it is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. The system's reward is not admiration, it's containment. It doesn't need to destroy you if it can absorb you. That's why every empire first punishes the rebel, then hires him once he's useful. Once the threat has been neutralized by comfort, he's no longer dangerous, he's predictable. This is the final test every self-taught man faces. The moment you become valuable, the world will try to make you dependent again. It will whisper, "You've earned your rest, you've made it. Why keep pushing?" But Machiavelli would laugh at such illusions. Power that rests decays. The Roman Senate did not conquer the world. It was those who defied it. The same pattern repeats endlessly. The system rewards you only after it believes it can own you. That's why you must be cautious when comfort comes dressed as recognition. It's not honor, it's negotiation. You can see this everywhere. Look at how institutions handle independent thinkers. When creators, entrepreneurs, or innovators rise outside the system, they're mocked until their success becomes undeniable. Then the same institutions that ignored them begin to praise them, sponsor them, even teach their methods. YouTube courses about disruption, universities studying entrepreneurial thinking, governments funding innovation. It's not admiration, it's domestication. Once the system names you, it claims you. Machiavelli understood that no ruler truly kills his enemies, he converts them. When Florence fell into chaos, the Medici didn't silence their rivals. They offered them comfortable roles: a seat in council, a pension, a title. The same happens today. You build something great, and the system says, now you're one of us. But remember, the system doesn't need to buy your obedience. It just needs to buy your time. Once you slow down, once you stop creating for yourself, once you accept their rewards, they have you again. Because the system doesn't care whether you're rich or poor. It only cares that you're manageable. That's why every modern empire controls people not by chains, but by comfort. The Roman circus distracted the masses with bread and entertainment. Today, we have dopamine. Endlessness feeds, endless scrolling, endless noise. The system has evolved. It no longer censors your freedom, it overwhelms it. You think you're learning, but you're consuming. You think you're improving, but you're reacting. The new slavery is overstimulation, knowledge without focus, curiosity without direction. And here's the Machiavellian twist. The same mind that frees you through self-education can also enslave you through distraction. Freedom is dangerous when it's undisciplined. The self-taught must therefore become self-governed. Machiavelli's virtue, the strength of character that turns chaos into control, isn't about dominance over others. It's about dominion over yourself. The more independent you become, the more discipline you require. Without discipline, freedom becomes vanity. Without restraint, intelligence becomes addiction. You cannot be your own master if you are still a slave to impulse. That's why true education ends not in knowledge, but in order. Discipline is the fortress of the self-taught man. It's what keeps him uncorrupted when success arrives. It's what allows him to build silently while the world screams for attention. It's what separates the conqueror from the performer. Because when everyone else fights for visibility, the disciplined few build invisible empires, empires of skill, systems, and influence that don't need applause to exist. You see this in every age. The Stoics trained in restraint, not rhetoric. The merchants of Florence used silence as a strategy. Even Machiavelli himself, exiled and disgraced, kept writing long after power rejected him. His discipline outlasted his defeat. And centuries later, the same world that exiled him now quotes him. That's the destiny of the self-taught. First mocked, then feared, then immortalized. So here lies the final truth. The system doesn't hate you because you fail. It hates you because you've proven it unnecessary. Every self-taught mind is a rebellion against control, a new order born from nothing. You are the proof that power can be created, not inherited. That skill can replace privilege. That sovereignty can exist without approval. And once you understand that, you no longer fight the system. You outgrow it. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But the real mastery is to fear nothing, not failure, not rejection, not solitude. Because once you stop needing the system's definition of success, you become invisible to its control. You stop reacting, you start directing, you cease being a citizen and become a sovereign. So, what does it mean to be self-taught in a world built to tame you? It means you are no longer part of the game. You are the one writing the rules. You learn what others refuse to touch. You act when others wait. You build when others beg. You don't ask for permission. You manufacture power. And when they call you arrogant, stubborn, or unrealistic, remember this. Those are the words of the obedient describing the free. The moment you stop needing approval, you become untouchable. That's what every ruler, every system, and every institution fears, that you'll no longer bow to the game they control. Comment, I build in silence. Because the world doesn't need to see you coming. It only needs to feel the impact when you arrive.